Hello, so I chose The Sarah Gives Thanks for the Bloomer Award project, and this book was illustrated by David Gardner and was written by Mike Allegra. I was unfamiliar with the book before I found it within the library, um, and I found it pretty fascinating. I really enjoyed the watercolor illustrations. I'm just going to open it up so you can see a few of them, which are pretty nice. Um, And so basically, this book is about Sarah Hale, and basically, she was a champion for women's rights. She strove to be, or strove to get an education and to become a writer and editor. Um, After her husband passed away, she actually made a living and was able to provide for her family as being a writer and publisher. Um, I guess the gist of the story is basically her efforts to make Thanksgiving a national holiday. Up until 1863, it wasn't, and it was because of her efforts that it actually became a national holiday and was celebrated by everybody in the nation. Um, so, I mean, it was, I mean, for the time period, what she did uh, was pretty amazing. I mean, back then, women were basically, told to be a housewife, stay-at-home mom, but she was able to actually have a career and provide for her family. So I was unaware that Thanksgiving wasn't a national holiday until 1863, um, which I don't know. I think it was pretty unbelievable because we all know the story of Pilgrims and the Indians, but back then it was only really celebrated in um, I guess you would say the Northeast. Uh, States like Virginia and other southern states really didn't celebrate it. But it was because of Sarah's efforts that it became a national holiday. And it was a struggle for her. It took her, I think, 30 some years to actually be able to get President Lincoln to make it an official holiday. Um, I think for the book, what really stuck out to me was the watercolors, the texture. It really had a sense of like nostalgia and a real good feeling of times past. I think it really added to the text, which was kind of like a historical biography about Sarah. Um, Kirkus Reviews explains that Gardner nicely combines vignettes and double page spreads, his colors reflecting mood, while lots of period and humorous details will bring readers back for another perusal. Perusal. Uh, and I totally agree with him. Like, I think there's a lot of little subtle details within the illustration. Um, there's, I don't know, it's kind of has a really nice balance with like different scenes depicted. Let me show some of those. Some of these are full page, but then like throughout it has different scenes that show like time passage. I don't know if you can see this or not. I'll show you. So it like shows her young, and she gets old by the time that she actually gets this accomplished. Um, so I think it has a really nice sense of like time and the effort that she had to put into making this possible. I believe this book does fit the criteria to become a Bloom or to receive the Bloomer Award. Um, it it was well written and well illustrated, and it does champion Sarah, a woman that doesn't exactly follow tradition. She goes out and um, does what she believes is right, and she encourages women to support her. She writes to the president. She writes to governors to make things happen. So I think in that aspect, it was deserving of the award. And so after reading the gender stereotyping and underrepresentation of female characters article, um, I found that there is a few instances in this book where Sarah is shown taking care of children, which kind of fits the traditional view of women, I guess. Uh, but in contrast to that, it also shows her um, as an editor and writer, and not something at the time that was necessarily, thought of as normal. Um, it really did challenge the times back then. Um, I think it could have used maybe a few more illustrations that depicted her as an editor and as like a leader and as a boss, because she ends up like taking over the magazine. Um, but I think overall it was positive, a positive message for women, um, and I think I don't think it's sexist. I mean, it's not that she used her looks or her relationship with men to be successful. It was all her intelligence, her effort, um, and like her desire as a writer to to do good things. There's even a part in the book she started out as selling hats, and she ended up leaving that because she didn't like that women were focused on beauty and not on education. Um, so like after reading this book, I learned about how Thanksgiving actually came to be a national holiday in 1863 when Sarah convinced Abraham Lincoln to make it so. I also found, that there was champions back then for women's rights and for equality, and that Sarah made a lot of efforts in education and education of women specifically. Um, and so I think overall it was a really, really good book and enjoyed the illustrations. And so thank you for your time and have a good night.